See, I hesitate to put the positive connotations on it, even though, to be honest, there are positive connotations to it, because it's absolutely delightful to be, for the whole, to not be having to sort of keep being distorted by the personal will, for it to just act. The whole, or you could call it spirit, for it just to be moving without being impeded all the time. It's lovely, but I hesitate to give it too much spirit or positive connotations, because then the mind, the egoic will goes, ooh, I'd like that. You see, and then it gets attached to the good part. But of course it's one feels it, right? When this wholeness is just moving and operating very spontaneously.
So this is something that you've called closing the gap?
Yeah. Well, the movement itself is when the gap is closed. Mm-hmm. Where there is no gap between what's realized and who we are as a human being. Right? That gap gets closed, because often when we have a realization of spiritual awakening, at some point we start to recognize very often that there's a gap between what we know, what we've realized, and where our activity is coming from, where our human movement is coming from, right? There's often this great discrepancy, like, I know that that's not true, what I'm saying, what I'm doing. I know it's not coming from, it's not an expression of truth, but good Lord, it's happening anyway. That's the gap. And I pass along what my teacher used to say, close the gap. You see, but the ego can't close the gap. It doesn't know the first thing about closing the gap. You can't close that gap by trying to close the gap. The gap closes by itself when you see what's creating the gap. What's creating the gap is always very simple, although its expression may be quite varied. It's always some version of what I want, what I don't want. That creates the gap. Or as one old Zen master said, one thought sets heaven and earth infinitely apart. I would add one thought believed. Just the passing of a thought, no problem. The believing of a thought, big problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. It's the thing about all this, it's hard to really enunciate, that's hard to really get across, is the more subtle version, where the more subtle movement of this sort of dropping away of the personal will is in many ways the most powerful, even though it's very, very, it's experienced as something quite subtle. And that's the hardest thing to get across, is you start to run up against almost these archetypal patterns of holding. Almost like a very common one that some people, it depends on what your makeup is, but people come up almost, at some point, you almost feel this existential sort of hesitation or guilt, like, I can't just totally let go, you see, because then I would be leaving behind, in many ways, the human condition. And I'd be leaving everybody in it behind. My loved ones, my mate, my children, everybody, I'm going to be, and I don't mean you're going to be leaving them behind as a human being. Of course, you're going to still be standing there just like you were before. But internally, when you realize you're leaving behind, and there's this archetypal, for a lot of people, sort of pull, it's like a taboo. It's an archetypal taboo that's kind of like, no, you can't do that. You can visit there, but you can't live there, you see. You can't just go. You can't leave us all behind. It's not fair. You have this duty. I'm just giving words to this sort of, this deep archetype within human consciousness. It's like a taboo against fully being what you really are. Often people will bump into that. This is something on a bit more subtle level. There are other sort of deep, what I think of as almost archetypal patterns, because they're so common, And yet, they're quite subtle that when you run up against them, you're actually quite surprised. These seemingly really good arguments why you can't fully let go. You know, like, yeah, but we're destroying everything. You see, we're destroying the earth and we're killing each other and there's starving babies all over the world and you can't just totally let go. See? Seems like a good argument, huh? You can't just let go and let them all die and starve. And all. Of course, that's not what's being asked for. You're not being asked to just let them starve and die and fend for themselves. What you're being asked for is to let go. The outcome of that is completely unknown. You can't know what you will be doing once you've let go. And that's the hard part for the mind. The mind wants to know, yeah, I can let go into this place beyond my personal will if I just knew what it would be like. The problem is you can't know what it will be like until you're already there. You see what I mean? So again, the only thing you have to rely on is this irrational impulse, which is this impulse that's deeper than something that's you-centered or even us-centered. It's deeper than that. You pulled to it for reasons that you don't know. In retrospect, you look back and go, why did I ever hesitate for 1 second? Why did I ever think that me staying in the egoic consciousness was somehow going to help humanity? Why did I even hesitate for a split second? But that's in 2020 hindsight. When you're there feeling the tug of the archetype against being what you fully are completely, it doesn't seem that obvious at all. There seems to be really good reasons why you shouldn't let go, right? And if good reasons don't work to get you to hold on, then you'll get spooked. Spooky reasons. This terrible thing will happen. The devil will take you over, right? Like Jesus when he spent his 40 days in the desert, and he gets tempted and did it, right? Temptation, this is what's in it for you, kid. Here, come over here. This is what you can become. I'll give you everything you want. Temptation, when that doesn't work, fear. Come over here or else. Something terrible is going to happen to you. So these stories are there because people have experienced this sort of very, very deep movement. And they've had to, what you encounter is very archetypal, very classic in many ways.